Sports car, high-paying job, new apartment, great friends, all the stuff. But I still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide 2 years later because of how miserable I was and depressed and anxious, and I just felt like I was living life by accident, and I didn't think there was any hope for my future. And that really was the thing that shifted all of it.
Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. Again, it's Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. I have another amazing guest, and I know you hear me say that all the time, but the guests are just amazing that I've been getting the honor of having on the show, and today is no different. So what I like to do, Kevin, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then, like I said, we're going to rock and roll.
Okay. Well, first of all, Max, I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to chat. I am Kevin Palmieri. I am the founder and the host of Next Level University, a global top 100 podcast with 1,890 episodes, I think, as of today. And that is what I get to do for a living at this point. So we do an episode every day, and I podcast about holistic self-improvement, and we get to coach people, and it's amazing. This is quite literally a dream come true. It is very strange. I don't really know how it happened, but I will do my best to explain the ups and downs of the journey today.
All right. I love it. Right. Because I love talking with like-minded people that are out to help, others improve their lives, right? And become better people. It's just, it's in our blood, right? It's in your blood. I could tell, if you see Kevin, he's pretty big, so I got to be nice here because he may reach across this mic and, slap me one a couple times.
Never, Max.
I'm kidding. But I love it. So, Kevin, go back as far as you want and kind of give the audience like a bit of your childhood growing up. What were the challenges and stuff like that led you to create this Next Level University that you're helping people?
Yeah. So I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. And obviously that plays a role in a young boy's life. And that's still something I'm working through and happy to discuss that. Grew up lower middle class. We definitely had talks often about how we were going to pay rent. So that is something that still doesn't run me, but it still affects me to this day. My relationship with money, my money mindset. Outside of that, childhood was fairly normal. I always felt like I was an outsider, though, because it always seemed like my good friends' families always wanted to kind of adopt me and give me a normal childhood. And I never understood it until I reflected it. And it was very interesting to look back and realize that's why I got invited on vacation. And that's why I slept over and got invited to dinner, because they were trying to give me a sense of normalcy. But things for me really started to pivot after high school. My childhood was pretty normal. In high school, I realized I didn't want to go to college. It didn't make sense. I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, nor do I have it. So right. I'm not up for scholarships exactly. I'm not a straight.
Excuse me.
No worries. So I decided that I'm not going to go to college. And at that point, I was training to fight mixed martial arts. That is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a professional fighter. So I got a job at a gas station. I'd pump gas from 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. I'd go lift weights. Then I'd go train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai for a few hours. And that was my life for a couple of years. And it was awesome. And then eventually I realized after I tore my shoulder that I probably wasn't going to be a professional fighter. And I needed to figure out some sort of steadiness in my life. So I ended up getting a job at a hospital, cleaning bathrooms and floors. Then I quit that and I was a personal trainer. Then I quit that and I was a truck driver and a forklift operator. And then I quit that and I went to the fire academy and I got my on-call volunteer firefighter certificate. Ended up leaving that and I got this job, Max, in an industry called weatherization. So we would go into large buildings and we would retrofit the buildings to make them more energy efficient. It's the easiest way to explain it. The rest of it, you don't really need to know. But since I was working on state and government contracts, I went from making $15 an hour at my previous job to anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour at this new job. So I was convinced everything I went through up to this point was exactly what needed to happen. And if you looked at me, Max, when I was 25, my girlfriend was a model. I was getting ready to compete in a bodybuilding show. So I was quite literally in the best shape I will ever be in. Sports car, high paying job, new apartment, great friends, all the stuff. But I still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide 2 years later because of how miserable I was and depressed and anxious. And I just felt like I was living life by accident and I didn't think there was any hope for my future. And that really was the thing that shifted all of this for me. I aspire so deeply to be the type of person that I needed at my lowest point. That's really why I do the things I do. That's why I try to show up with the energy I try to show up with. After that suicidal ideation and the mental health challenges, I ended up leaving my job. And then in 2018, I started doing this full time. And then it just became another journey of just miserableness and suffering, being a broke entrepreneur. I couldn't buy my now wife Christmas presents. My car broke down and I couldn't get it fixed. I got sent to collections for my car insurance. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it got worse for a long time. And then eventually we were able to grow enough and then we were able to turn this into a business and monetize it and all that stuff. But yeah, the journey of my life has been, nobody thought I was going to be any level of successful, especially me. Somehow I achieved more success than I ever thought I would, but I ended up more miserable than I ever thought possible. I left all that behind, became the most fulfilled version of myself, even though I had nothing to show for it. And now I am fulfilled and successful, quote unquote, at a higher level than I ever have been. But my life is also the most stressful it's ever been because it's a lot of responsibility running a business. So It's been an interesting journey, to say the least, my friend.
I love it, right? Because a lot of things you're talking about, I can totally relate with, right? Like growing up without a father, and you said it right. That it's something that I feel is important, right? And I just remember when my dad, because I hadn't seen him, they divorced when I was about 5, right? So kind of like you, he disappeared. Well, he didn't disappear. He just, his job, his career took him everywhere, but in the United States, right? Because he was an electrical engineer. He worked overseas a lot. And then I remember when he came back, and I've shared this before, right? At 10 years old, when your dad tells you after you haven't seen him, and he's like, I promise I'll be back. We're going to spend a lot of time together, right? And you hadn't seen him, so you're excited, right? So he leaves, birthday comes and goes, no dad. And then, I find out he passes of a massive heart attack. Right. So like you said, that challenge of like that 11-year-old kid held on to anger for years, right? That led to so many things in my life, right? Like my addiction and how I handle relationships, right? And it's funny because as I look back and reflect too, like some of the relationship I get, and when they get tough, I bail. Like, see ya. There was no like, let's sit down, have a talk. It was just, it's uncomfortable. So I got to go.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Right. Because, well, one, we know that, right. Growing up like that, because we have similar stories, right. I had a single mom that raised my little brother and I. We didn't have those talks because she worked her butt off to make sure that we didn't have to worry about that stuff, right. That we always had a roof over our head. And, we always didn't get what we wanted, but we were taken care of. Right. And when you talked about your friends, doing that, I had a best friend that I could literally just jump my backyard, my wall in the backyard, and I'm in his house. And I'd always get invited to those father-son picnics. Right. And I'd watch everybody, with their dads. And I would take off, kind of like sit off to the side, and just, it would fuel my anger even more. Like, this should be me and you, Dad. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
And I used it as an excuse to do what I wanted to do. Right. But thank God, I've been clean and sober for 21 years, and I get to have talks like this with gentlemen like yourself who have gone through similar things. And I want you to tell the audience, right? Like, we know that life happens no matter what. And being an entrepreneur, I was always taught by my mentors that are entrepreneur, and really, they said, Max, it's not for the faint of heart. You're going to have to learn to fall down and get back up, fall down, get back up, get punched in the face, get back up.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So And it's interesting that you said when you're at your most successful, right? Money wise, job wise, that you were the most miserable, right? Kind of touch on that a little bit more because people think, I know, right? Yes, money is wonderful, right? If it pays our bills, it allows us to do the things. But I've had other entrepreneurs like yourself say the same thing, right? They were making a ton of money that you would, on the outside, it would look like they had everything together. But on the inside, they were just like lost and empty. They weren't fulfilled, like you said. So how did you get out of that time? I mean, you kind of talked about it, but like when you're in that mode, as you know, it feels like there's no way out. Like that hole, that the top of the hole is way up there, and you're like, you don't see any ladder ropes or anything. You're like, how am I going to get out of this? Right?
No, it was brutal. I didn't realize this at the time. I realized this in reflection. I was not this wise, I promise. I realized that for most of my life, I lived unconsciously. I just went through the motions. I had no idea why I was doing what I was doing. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So before that suicidal ideation, before I even got there, I had started the podcast. And I fell in love with self-awareness. That became the dipping my toe into figuring out who I was. That helped me understand that the reason I worked so hard to acquire external results is because I thought they were going to fix internal voids. I thought, and this is why I think it broke me, for lack of better phrasing. When you're a young man, a young boy, young man, and you feel insignificant because you don't have a dad, and you feel like a loser, and you feel abandoned, and you feel broken, and you feel different, you are thinking to yourself, well, in the future, if I could have a lot of money, and I could be jacked, and I could have a girlfriend that everybody else looks at and says, imagine what that would be like. How could I not be happy? Those are the opposite of what I have now. They must be the things that fix the problem. Right. So I think what happened was I had already been in really good shape. So I always liken it to, that was a key that I found. I put it in the lock and it didn't open the door. So I said, okay, well, maybe that's not the key. I dated some very attractive humans. Is that the key? Nah, that didn't do it either. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Great friends, best friends in the world. No, that didn't do it. I think what happened was the money one was the hardest one to get. So in my mind, that had to be the one that had the highest reward. And when I made the most money that I had ever made, and I put that key in the door and it didn't open, I said, then there's no key. This door is unopenable. Right. What I did was I reached out to someone. You talked about mentors and having people around you. I reached out to a friend of mine and I explained to him how I was feeling, how I was thinking, the stuff that I was going through. And he said a lot of different stuff, but he said, Kev, over the last few years, your awareness of yourself has changed a ton, but the environments that you find yourself in has stayed the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. And that, for me, Max, that was light at the end of the tunnel, permission to make a different decision in life, and it was just hope. I think when you feel hopeless, that's when you stop caring. You just don't care. Right. I felt hopeless. I felt like I made it far beyond what I was supposed to make in life, and I was never going to come back from that. So honestly, me leaving my job helped my mental health in terms of depression 10 out of 10. It made my anxiety probably 10 times worse, honestly, if I'm being honest. So it was almost, I traded in one thing for another thing. I'm somebody who is a huge believer and subscriber to therapy. I think therapy, counseling, all of that stuff is amazing. If you're a gentleman and you heard that and said, no, it's weak. If it's hard to do and you do it, it doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. That just is the way it is. And feelings they're hard, man. Feelings are hard, but they're so necessary. So yeah, I would say that the best answer is self-improvement. I have not gone a day without learning something about myself since I started this. And now I feel like I am in control of me more than I used to be. And there's something to that.
Absolutely. I agree. And that's it. You're going to, figure out like the why in happiness, right? You'll figure that out, like why I put that there, right? Mm-hmm. Because, a lot of the greats, I want to say, and one of the people I listen to and follow is Andy Frisella, right? Mm-hmm. Which he's brash, and there's a lot of F-bombs on his, podcast, but he says the best revenge you can get on anybody or anything, right, is personal excellence, like digging deep, working on yourself and becoming the best you can be, right? And then teaching other people how to do that. Yeah. Right. And I didn't understand that, until I got sober, when, in order to stay sober, I had to help somebody get sober, right? And teach them what was taught to me. Because there's a saying in the program of AA is that, I have to give away what was so freely given to me. Mm. It doesn't say I have to have someone pay for it, right? Or, you know what I mean? Because, and that's how I think you like in your case, in my case, like we find purpose, right? Is when we start helping other people, yeah. Right? And there's a guy, I'm sure Ty Lopez, right? And I share this because I want my audience to understand, right? He's very wealthy, right? And did well for himself. But one of the things he did with some buddies of mine in a group call that he had, right? It was only supposed to be like 10 minutes, but he got into it because they asked such great questions. And he said, if there was one thing I could have learned early on, and that was if I would have poured into people sooner, my success would have came a lot quicker. And then I could, you know what I mean? And that's all. I think all the people that I've listened to or read books on, it's all about, they worked hard to get to where they're at, but along the way, they've helped so many people, like you do with your podcast and teaching people self-development and personal development. And right, because you and I know, like, and if you've seen Kevin here, you guys, he's a pretty big dude, right? Like if I want to be like Kevin, I can't go, hey, Kevin, I'm sitting on my couch watching TV, but I want to be like you. First thing he's going to say, well, you better go to the gym. Like that YouTube guy, right? Go to the effing gym. Go to the effing gym. Right? Like, and it's like my sobriety, right? My sponsor would always tell me, you're not going to get this by osmosis. You can sit as close to me as you want, but if you don't do the work, you're not going to get it. Yeah. Right? So when we're all in a place, if you listen to what Kevin's saying, right? It's reflection. You've said that a couple of times, right? Take a look at yourself, which is the hardest thing to do, right? Especially if we have a past or, right? We don't want to do that. Oh my God, I don't want to think about what I did in the past or whatever. But I have learned though, right? Because you can't change it. But if you can take a look at it and see where you went wrong, you can change your future by being a better person, right? And you get to, like me, get to be here with Kevin and talk about his life and all this stuff like that. So Kevin, like on your journey, becoming an entrepreneur, right? We know that is, like you said, like it's like going through a landmine field, right? Because you don't know what's going to blow up or you're going to trip and fall, right? And how has that been for you, right? Because he's got it on his arm, people. You got to see it. A big old tattoo that says never quit. And you hear me on this podcast tell you all the time. So I want you to hear what Kevin's never quit looks like and how he got to where he's living his dream life, doing what he wants to do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. Your energy. I love it. It's like, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go back to the gym. I already went. I'm ready to go back.
I worked out this morning.
My man.
Finally did it. I was like, I posted, I said, it's time to get off my ass.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, see, I don't have to say it. I would say it to you if you didn't go, but you already went. So now we just got to do the same thing tomorrow.
There you go. Exactly.
Same thing tomorrow. The interesting thing about the entrepreneurial journey for me is most of it has been internal. Yeah, we were broke and that was hard and that sucked and that was embarrassing and there was shame when I couldn't pay the bills. That was terrible. But all things considered, we got some pretty amazing opportunities pretty quickly into this journey. And we were interviewing some super successful entrepreneurs and traveling. It was all going on credit cards that I couldn't afford to pay, but that's the cost of doing business in the beginning. Honestly, the biggest thing for me, Max, was I was wildly insecure. You would just never know it. I never felt smart enough. I never felt good enough. I never felt like I was supposed to be an entrepreneur. I don't know anything about business. And I happen to work with one of the most intelligent humans I've ever met in my entire life who seems to know everything about everything. So this journey has been a constant swing of me trying to be somebody I'm not, realizing that that's not sustainable, trying to find the positive things about that, and then trying to bring that back to who I am. Right. Authenticity doesn't mean you just be yourself. I think authenticity means you be yourself and improve yourself.
Right.
Right? The improved version of you is just as, if not more authentic than the original version of you. That was really the big thing for me. I still have imposter syndrome before I do certain things. I gave a really big speech with a really successful person recently, and the night before I was thinking to myself, I don't want to do this. Can I call in sick? Can I give myself some flat tires? Like, what do I have to do to get out of it? I didn't want to do it.
I can relate.
Right? So the other thing that's been super interesting is I used to, and I still do, deal with the fear of failure. Not good enough, not smart enough. Not good enough, not smart enough. That's what has run me. Now I understand the other side of that in the fear of success. I've seen glimpses of getting an opportunity and being frustrated that I have to take the opportunity because I know that's what's best for my future. And then when you do that opportunity, you get better opportunities. And it's essentially become, when you have an internal struggle and you work really diligently on overcoming that internal struggle, you get external opportunities. When you say yes to those external opportunities, the same cycle starts again. And then eventually you get to the place where you're comfortable on stage until you get the next stage. You're comfortable with a client until you get the next client. You're comfortable on a podcast until you get the next. That has been the journey for me. I'm blessed because my business partner and I are best friends, core values, core beliefs, core aspirations, super aligned. And my wife is a ride or die. She's not with me. She doesn't care about the podcast. She's grateful that I do it. She's grateful for the impact I'm having. But that doesn't mean when we get to the end of the night and when I'm on dish duty, I get a freebie not to do dishes. Like, I'm just, that.
Right.
My relationship is wonderful. My wife is wonderful. And I have a lot of supportive people that honestly believed in me more than I believed in myself. So the suffering piece, I mean, that sucks, but I'm a bodybuilder. I'm used to suffering. It's not the end of the world. The internal stuff of not being good enough, smart enough, imposter syndrome, that has been really one of the hardest things. And the story I always use for that might resonate with people out there watching or listening. There was a time where I was working out with my business partner and one of our good friends, very successful YouTuber, very successful speaker. And in the gym, I'm 10 out of 10 confident, crushing it. I'm in the best shape out of these three people. This is my arena. Awesome.
Right.
We finish the workout and we sit down and we start talking about business. I'm not in the lead here. This is not my area of expertise. I remember I had a moment where I said, these guys are so arrogant. Like, why are they so arrogant? Like, they're just overly confident in this. And then I had a conversation with myself and I said, is this a them problem or is this a me problem? And it was a me problem. Max, it was a me problem. And that became the awareness for me to try to start looking at it from multiple perspectives. You'll hear perspective a lot, you'll hear reflection a lot, and you'll hear awareness a lot. I think those are three of the most valuable things you can focus on when you're trying to grow.
Absolutely. It's, that's where it relates kind of to recovery, right? And I was taught early on, and someone goes, Max, you got a disease of perspective. And I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't know better, but I have seen over the years how my perspective has changed because I'm not so one-sided anymore. Yeah. Right. Like, I used to be that old fashioned counselor, right? Because I'm a 12-stepper, but right. Not everybody wants to get sober that way. But in the beginning, you should have saw me, Kevin. It was like, if you don't do this, you're going to die and I can't work with you. So like, leave me alone, and people would like, whoa, bro, chill out, man. Like, but I get what you're saying, right? Because I belong to this group, right? It's a group of men. It's like an accountability group. And there's some very smart individuals in there. So when I get into the chat and I see what they're talking about, I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah, same.
Right. This is not my arena. Like, you guys are like, cause I didn't go to business school. I don't know what half the things they're saying. Right. But you get me in my arena about recovery and, I'll stick to my guns, what I know and what I've been taught. Right. And I had a discussion with a guy in that group. He had his view and I had my view. Right. And no one won, but it was cool to just, I kind of gave myself like, oh, I didn't back down and go, you know what, I'm out. Like, he's going to, like, it was okay to disagree. You know what I mean? And he respected my view. I respected his view. And the guy he's a very rich entrepreneur, but he's very down to earth and has his views on how things, but I listened to him because he's very smart. Right. But like you though, the imposter syndrome kicks in with when I'm around those guys, right? I like to be the fly on the wall because if they don't hear me, but they just see me, I can just listen in and learn, right? I'll be the sponge, but I don't want to get involved because I'll be like, stuttering over myself. But what I have learned, like you said, in reflection and perspective is I'm put in those situations for a reason, like you were, right? This is how we're going to learn is, especially being around people that are farther ahead of us, right? This is how we learn to get to where they're at because they've already gotten there and they're going to teach us in their way how they did it. It's up to us to learn and pay attention and then execute, as some of these people say, and go do it.
Well, and you probably earned it in some way. That's the other thing too, is you most likely earned the opportunity to be in that environment. You just might not think that yet. That's this was one of the hardest nights of my life. My business partner and I flew out to California. Again, broke. All this is on credit cards. Just whatever. We'll figure this out in a couple of years. Whatever. And we went to this Brendan Burchard event because we got free tickets. His team reached out and gave us free tickets because my business partner had a social media following. I was like, all right, cool. While we were there, we set up a bunch of interviews with people that we had interviewed and we wanted to interview in person. So we drove down to Malibu and interviewed somebody just overlooking the ocean from their house. It was amazing. It was like, this is something. And I think one of our last interviews was at this guy's house at his mansion. And we did the interview in his movie theater. And I remember thinking, this is wild. This is a dream come true. We go to his backyard. He's got this nice pool. He's got this built-in counter with a grill and all this stuff. And he rolls out this like Benihana style grill. And he's cooking dinner for us. And I remember him and my business partner started talking about business. And I was so anxious. I got so sad because I was like, I made it to a place where I aspired to make it to, and I don't even belong here. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. I told my business partner that. I said, dude, I'm not smart enough. Like, I'm never going to be smart enough. And he said, Kev, what if you're just not smart enough yet? What if we try to build some habits around you learning? And that became the Mario Kart booster for me to learn. And I've read hundreds of books since then. I think sometimes we avoid the pain that's necessary for the change that we desire to have because pain sucks.
Right.
But if I've learned anything from talking to people and interviewing people, almost everybody has their own unique hero's journey of really going through it, eventually figuring out how to overcome it, and then trying to help other people avoid the same pains that they went through. And now I look back on that and say, okay, well, now I can be the person that I needed, because if I didn't go through the stuff, I wouldn't have the answers, or I wouldn't have the experience, or I wouldn't have the empathy. So yeah, I think I really do. I think it's perspective. I think that is massively important. Reflection. You gotta, depending on where your self-belief is, if you struggle with self-belief, you gotta give yourself credit for how far you've come. And then awareness. How well do you know yourself? If you know your cell phone, if you know your car, if you know what your favorite sports team is doing more than you know yourself, that is a dangerous game we're playing, because the season's going to end. That show's going to end. You're going to buy a new phone. You're stuck with you forever. And I think that's an opportunity.
Exactly. And when I first heard something like that in my recovery, it was like, I don't know if it was my sponsor or one of my mentors, but it was like, Max, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments where, like, even I was new, it hit me right between the eyes. Like, dang, that means I can't hide anywhere, because I'm going to go and I got to, right. And, I like what you're saying, because if you have that perspective, you'll understand when people like Kevin or me, or you hear it, life happens for you, not to you. Right. With all the ups and downs, right? Because some people, life sucks because this happened to me, this blah, blah, blah. And I always tell the clients I work with, I go, those are opportunities for you to grow and learn. Right. Just because you got sober does not mean life's going to be, peaches and creams and unicorns and all that good stuff. Right. Because it's going to, right. And I was taught early on, if someone pats you on the butt and says, Max, it's going to be okay, run the other way, because it's not. Right. You got work to do, and you got to learn the skills to stay sober. And that's just like with life, right? Like, it's like the famous Rocky, in the one where he's talking to his son and he's like, it's not how hard you could get, it's how hard you get hit, get knocked down, and keep getting back up and keep moving forward, right? Because I love that, right? It's one of my favorites. It's how winning is done, right? It's you don't quit. And sounds like you and me, like we've been hit where we're like seeing stars and going, I don't know if I want to do this again, right? But let's go forward again. Let's try this again.
Yeah. Well, it's fulfilling. I think that's the thing that I now have that I never did, is I'm very fulfilled. I work a lot and I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed out and there's a lot of moving pieces, but I love this. I love podcasting. I love adding value. And when you find something that's fulfilling, I think you're willing to do it and you're willing to go through what it takes to keep doing it more than somebody who isn't. Right? I've done, at this point, Max, I think I'm coming up on 3,000 podcast episodes.
That's freaking
It's
amazing.
a lot. It's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
But I love this.
Congratulations.
I appreciate that. So thank you so very much. There's somebody out there right now who say, yeah, no, that ain't for me. But you could write 3,000 poems. You could write 3,000 pages. You could write 3,000 this. You could do 3,000 this. Maybe it's not your thing, and that's okay. When you find, I always say that I think fulfillment is a fuel that burns very slightly warm, but for a long periods of time.
Right.
I think motivation is something that burns very hot, but very quickly. Motivation comes and goes.
Right.
When you're fulfilled, it's different. It's a different journey. You don't want to stop. I don't know. Yeah, there's no amount of money you could offer me right now. Zero, no amount. And said, Kev, you got to leave the business. You can't podcast again. You got to leave this behind. I'm not interested. I wouldn't be fulfilled.
Right.
It'd be cool for like 2 weeks, maybe 2 months. It'd be cool. But then I'd wake up one day and say, well, what's the point? Like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? I never thought I'd say that in the beginning, right?
Well, here's what I see, right? Because you found your purpose and now you live on purpose or in purpose on purpose, right?
Yes.
And that's the motivation, right? Because I like what David Goggins says, motivation is shit, right? Because you could be wrong. I get up like today, I was all, yeah, I worked out. I get up tomorrow morning. I'm like, I'm not going to tell Kevin, but I'm not gonna you know what I mean? But it felt good, right? And but I too, like in what I do, this, right? You couldn't tell me to. I've been doing this, for 172 episodes, and I love every minute. And I've seen where I go back, where I've grown, and where I've gotten better, and the guests I get to talk to, right? Because and that's what I choose to surround myself with, right? Because they say you're the direct result of the 5 people you hang out with. Yep. And that's, you know what I mean? If I keep hanging around these awesome podcasters, entrepreneurs, right, I'm going to be number 6, right?
Yep.
I keep hanging around like Kevin, who's working out and getting jacked, right? I'm going to be number 6. Well, maybe not jacked, but I'm going to get in shape and I'm going to be the best in shape grandpa around here. You know what I mean?
I love that. I love it.
But my thing is, and I appreciate the things you have shared. You have brought so much value to my audience and myself, is right. We all are going to suffer at one point from that imposter syndrome. Trust me. Like even this morning for a brief second, I was like, what excuse could I come up with, Kevin? Cause he's this, I read your bio and stuff. And I'm like, dang, man, he's got a lot of, like, he's going to pick me apart. Cause I'm so far behind him. And it's like, Max, stop, just do it. Right. It's like the Nike commercial. And like you said, we've hit it off since we both got on here, and it's, I love hearing your story and how, like nothing will keep you from doing this. This is what you are meant to do. And that's your purpose.
Yes,
and
100%.
Right. And then when you find that purpose, it's so cool because you help people along the way. And sometimes you don't even know it.
Most of the time you don't know it. Right.
It's like, even in my recovery, if I've shared something, right, I've had people like a year later go, I saw you at this meeting and you shared this and you kept me from going out and possibly killing myself because you shared my story with yours. And that's what I love. And that's why I try to bring guests like yourself on here so they could share their story and, hear that, no matter how bad it gets, whether, like you said, you're on the edge of your bed and you're thinking about, I'm just going to end it. Right. There's always hope. As long as you don't give up hope. Right. And there's people out there. Yeah. Like I tell my audience, you ever need to talk, just reach out, like I will be there. if you just need me to be an ear, right? And that's what we do for each other. Like, you have brightened my day by being here and sharing your story, right? And I get to listen to your story. So I'm going to ask you some questions that I like, right?
Let's do it.
You get behind me, fearless, right? You kind of talked about it, how you are. But what does fearless mean to you, Kevin? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Fearless to me means you are afraid, but you do it anyway. Yeah, that's how I think about it. I'm afraid of a lot of stuff. I don't like flying. I don't like speaking in public. I just do it because if you want to be the best speaker you can be, you got to speak, right? That's one way to do it. So yeah, for me, there's a couple things I never resonated with. One, people who said, don't care what people think. I don't get it. I do. I care what people think. And I don't know if I ever aspire to get to a place where I don't. I have a lot of people that I care about. I care about what they think. People that would say, well, just believe in yourself more. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. So I need give me an algorithm. How do I do it? If it was that easy, I would just snap my fingers and do it. So there's always been those thoughts for me. And one of those was be fearless. I'm not somebody who is. I have a lot of fears. I just decide whether or not they're worth overcoming based on the fact that if I don't overcome them, I don't get the things that I want. And I'm just very, very honest with myself about that. Either I do what it takes to accomplish the goal or I don't get the goal. And if I don't get the goal because I didn't do the effort, I do not get to complain about it. That's on me. That is not on anybody else. I know how to lose 10 pounds. If I don't lose the 10 pounds, that's on me. That's not on McDonald's. It's not on my wife. It's not on Max. That's on Kevin. Kevin knows how to do it. Kevin decided not to do it.
Right.
So I kind of look at fear the same way. Yeah. If I'm afraid and I think it'll be worth it and it's aligned, I try to do the thing and it gets easier as you go. I found that too. It gets easier as you go.
Right. Because the more you practice that, do it anyway, despite your fear. You know what I mean? Then it doesn't mean the fear goes away, but it's easier for I've already done this. So I've been afraid. So I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah. It compounds. You start small, right? Somebody reached out to me one time and said, I want to be a speaker like you. And I said, all right, cool. Love it. Next natural step, we got to get you speaking. On a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid would you be to do the speech that I just did in front of the people I did it in front of? 10 out of 10. We don't start there. We got to find we have to find the constructive amount of fear for you to face so then you can get up and do it again tomorrow. Max, if you went to the gym today and worked out for 4 hours, you ain't going tomorrow.
No.
You ain't going tomorrow. But a quick 30-minute workout, or maybe it's your first time in, we're just doing the treadmill, whatever. It's as much about tomorrow as it is today. It's as much about the next rep as it is this rep. And that's something that's been very, very helpful for me in all things, but especially fear chasing.
Exactly. And like you said, it's like anything, right? You gotta build yourself up, right? I can't go into my garage and put all these weights thinking I can squat like I used to when I was 21, right? Because I'll be texting Kevin, like, I'm on my garage floor. Can you mind doing this while I lay on the ground because I can't move? Right?
I'm on my way.
But what I told myself, because I am my own worst enemy, right? I'm my own worst critic. And I said, look, I'm going to set a timer, 45-minute workout, and I'm just going to go for 45 minutes. And I did.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I didn't set any expectations. I just said, I'm going to work out. I'm going to go for a walk with a weighted vest. I'm going to come back in the garage. I'm going to do some kettlebell stuff, some body weight stuff. If I make it to 45 minutes, I'm a happy camper. And I did. I actually went over by 5 minutes, but I figured that's what I have to tell myself, right? Because I'm not 18. I'm not 21. I'm not even 30 anymore, right? And I've had some injuries. I can't lift like I used to, but I can get in shape and do the best I can with what I have and right, quit giving myself excuses, which then turns me into Mr. Depressed because I don't go out and do it.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just going to build, like you said, tomorrow's not here yet, but tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do the same thing over again. Right. 45 minutes, go out there, do my walk, come back in the garage and do something. Because I got a lot of grandkids to keep up with, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to stay in shape for them. They'll be chasing you around. You'll be chasing them around. You want to get taken down by one of your grandkids. Come on.
No, not at all. Right. I'm that kind of grandpa. You ain't taking me down. But, and it's part of the whole being, an entrepreneur, I think, and just in life, right? You got to work on mind, body, and spirit. So Thank you for sharing that with
Of
us. So
course.
my next question is happiness. There you see the Y in it, right?
Yes.
Knowing I put the Y in this, what does happiness mean to you, and how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, happiness is interesting. Happiness to me is dopamine. It's the hit of dopamine I get after I do a certain thing, after I eat a certain food, whatever it is. That's really what it, yeah, it's momentary bouts of chemicals. That's how I think of happiness. If you said, Kev, are you the happiest you've ever been? I would probably say no. I'm the most fulfilled I've ever been. But I think fulfillment and happiness are different. I think happiness is more results based. I think fulfillment is more journey based. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, because I would say fulfillment is more like joy, right? Joy is lasting, where happiness, as
It's
you
fleeting.
know, fleeting, right?
Yeah.
I could go out here, have my lunch and not like it and go, man, this day sucked, right? All of a sudden, everything before it sucks because I had a bad lunch or whatever, right? But joy, like being here with you and having this awesome conversation, right? This is what's going to pull me through the rest of the day and, work with some of the clients I have to work with or get to work with, I say. And that's, it's all perspective, like you said.
Of course.
Right. And I remember when this is awesome because when I was told that, like I was so clueless, but my sponsor says, you get to work, you get to do this, you get to that. I was like, when it clicked, it was like, I get to have this interview with Kevin and I get to have him on my show and pick his brain and have him share with my audience what makes him tick, and you heard it, everybody. You're like, this is amazing stuff. And like, again, thank you, Kevin.
Of course.
So if my audience wants to get a hold of you, work with you, or listen to your podcast, where can they find you?
So the podcast is called Next Level University. It's on all the podcast platforms. It's on YouTube. We do an episode every day, so you'll either fall in love with us deeply or hate us quickly. One of the two. Hopefully the first one. And then I usually just give out my email because not everybody has Instagram, not everybody has Facebook, not everybody has LinkedIn. My email is kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. I second what Max said. If you need a shoulder, you have questions about anything, podcasting, life, whatever, I'm always a message away. I do my own emails and I want to add value. So anything I can do, I'm more than happy to add value to.
I love it. Love it. It's been a great time, man. But you're not off the hook just yet.
Uh-oh, what do we got?
You got my one last question, which is
All
my
right.
favorite question that I ask of all my guests. And it goes like this, Kevin. What is the one piece of advice you could give my audience that will help them grow as human beings? Excuse me, I can't speak. Grow as human beings and become better people.
I would say only listen to the advice that you truly, truly, truly resonate with. Now, I'm not saying don't have an open mind and take other opinions. I think one of the lies that we're told is if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. I think life is scary as heck. The last thing you want to scare you is your goals. So what I say often, and it's the opposite of what I think a lot of other people say, if you're crawling out of a hole, if you're trying to improve a little bit, set goals that are almost embarrassingly small for you. When you accomplish those goals, then you can set bigger ones. Then you can set bigger ones. Then you can set bigger ones. You're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight. It doesn't work that way. It's 0 to 1, then 1 to 2, and then 2 to 3. Consistency matters much more than day-to-day intensity. That is what I would say. We had a guest on in the very beginning, Lori Harder. And I'll never forget this. This is one of the things I'll never forget for as long as I live. She said, consistent 70% days are better than spotty 100% days. That is how we built this business. That's how I've gone on so many podcasts. That's the way. I don't always get off the interview and say, whew, that was the one. 10 out of 10. Oftentimes I get off and say, that was probably a 7 for me. I'll do better. But if I do a bunch of 7s, that 7 then becomes an 8. Right? And then eventually that 8 becomes better than any 10 would have been in the past. So focus on the small improvements. I know small improvements aren't sexy, but they're sustainable, and that's what makes the biggest change, at least from what I've seen.
Exactly. That's why I like that Navy SEAL Admiral who says, first thing you should do is make your bed, because then you've accomplished your first goal of the day and it sets you in the right mindset. So like with anything, set a goal, like I did, right? Was to go and take care of my wife, get her off to work, feed my mother-in-law, and then go work out. And I did 3 things that right? Put me in a good mindset today. So, man, this has been an amazing time, my friend. Thank you so much for
You're
being
so
here.
welcome, brother. You're so welcome. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yes, I enjoyed it 100%. Absolutely. So, as you heard, everybody, if Kevin made you think, if he taught you something, if he made you smile, and my famous, if Kevin made you go, I like that. Please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.